Dan Fazio, managing editor of GI Jobs magazine, and I'm with Chris Perkins today. Chris is a Marine Corps veteran who these days is the global co-head of futures, OTC clearing, and FX prime brokerage for Citi. Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. Don't ask me to explain what it means.
Yeah, I probably will. So GI Jobs is celebrating our 20th anniversary this year, and as part of that, we're revisiting some of the post 9/11 veterans who have been in the magazine over the past 20 years. And Chris is our latest victim. So Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure. And thank you for what you've done for the community and helping them find meaningful employment. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's believe me, it's our pleasure. We love helping, our mission of helping connect veterans with civilian careers and education and business ownership opportunities. But you were on the cover of the September 2011 GI Jobs as part of the Wall Street Warriors cover. And back then you were, I have to check my notes on this, Director and Global Head of OTC Clearing for Citi at the ripe old age of 36. You're still with Citi. Can you summarize for us how your career has progressed over the last 10 years?
Yeah, sure, no problem. And thanks for asking. So if you step back, previously my career did 9 years in the Marine Corps. I was a veteran of Ramadi, 2004. Jim Mattis was my division commander. Transitioned out and I went to Lehman Brothers. We went through the insolvency at Lehman Brothers. I received a call from Citi the following day. And I immediately got to work to clean up what Lehman left behind. Interesting things happened after that, where that was like late 2008 into 2009. Laws were passed across the globe, and we had to figure out how to take $700 trillion in derivatives and migrate it into conform with the new regulations and laws that had been put forth. Whether it was Dodd-Frank, and we had to move that derivatives market into a cleared paradigm, a regulated paradigm. And so back in 2011, I was getting that business off the ground. It was a startup, and I leveraged my Marine Corps training I had a mission to build the best cleared business in the world. It was one of the hottest new businesses on Wall Street because it was one of the only businesses that was really that came out of the regulation and law that was put forth. So it was a new hot business. I assembled a team. It was a very diverse, capable team, a global team. And by leveraging that team, we differentiated ourselves, through those things that you just can't teach. We worked harder. We had a strong culture. We applied the diverse thinking of this team to build some of the best technology in the world. And I remember at the time, it was not easy for us to launch the business because we had a very difficult crisis. And so we would line up with all of our competitors, and we had to find a way to truly, differentiate despite migrating through the crisis, which wasn't necessarily easy. Competitors of mine could walk into the top clients and say, look, we're Fortress balance sheet. That you have to do business with us. We just decided not to take that path. We decided to work harder and to build better solutions for our clients. And so if you fast forward to today, that business that I started back in 2010 or so, we're a global force. We're number one in the world. We can do things that people can only think about. Profitable business, global business. I really can't get into the numbers of what we make, but it's a very strong, solid business. We've won multiple awards, and we're a dominant force. And we've been able to be a dominant force across multiple geographies, Asia, EMEA, and the States. We're known for our capabilities. In 2018, I was tapped on the shoulder and asked to look at another business, foreign exchange prime brokerage business. And I looked at it, and I was, and this is on background. Is this on background, Dan, or?
Yeah, just where your career has gone the last 10 years.
A couple of things that may have to clear. So 2018, I was tapped on the shoulder to look at another business. I looked at it, and I was announced as the global head of the foreign exchange prime brokerage business. On the same day that I was announced, Bloomberg reported that we took a $180 million loss in that business. And I'm not here to comment on that. I'm just citing that there was a story that announced a loss. So I was tasked to restructure and integrate that business. Again, it took me around the world working closely with my clients, my regulators, and my team to integrate. And we were able to remediate and restructure that business in record time. Again, leveraging the teams, leveraging the people. And we retain a #1 market share in that business as well. So #1 in clearing, #1 in FXPB. Recently, not too recent, but back in October, I was asked to run as well and serve as co-head of the global futures business. And in the futures business, what we do is we provide our clients. Futures is a very, very ancient business, originally designed to help farmers hedge a lot of their agriculture. It's a derivatives business as well. So now I'm in charge of the both the voice and electronic execution for exchange traded derivatives or futures globally, and the clearing of futures products as well. So 3 global businesses that we've integrated into one. We currently report into the equities business, and it's been an incredible ride from a career perspective, and I've loved it. I've enjoyed it. That's the career trajectory, but there's been simultaneously a trajectory on the veteran space, which I would love to unpack if that's your next question, or I can go to it now.
Yeah, well, that was definitely one of my questions was, you know, I know you're one of the founders of Veterans on Wall Street, VOWS, when you were in the magazine last time back in 2011. So, and you've been involved in a number of other initiatives as well. But let's talk about VOWS. Where has that gone, and what kind of impact has that had on helping veterans get into finance?
Yeah, VOWS has been a really exciting part of my journey. And in 2009, I founded the first military veterans network at Citi. And it was great because it institutionalized our support of military veterans. And when you institutionalize something like that, people come out of the woodwork and they can grab onto something and they get very excited. And so when we did that, we found out that our current chairman of the board, a guy named Dick Parsons at the time, was a vet. He didn't really talk about it. The chairman of the board after that, Michael Neal, was a Marine. And so we were able to really reach into the depths of the organization and find a number of supporters, including Suni Hartford, who was the head of markets at the time. Now she's president of UBS Asset Management. And so once we got together and really Suni and I started talking, and she's like, we should make this bigger. And I said, what a great idea. What if we were to not compete in this space and rather share best practices across financial services? #1, it would be great for our bank. #2, it'd be great for veterans. #3, it'd be great for our industry, because our industry was under incredible pressure at the time for some of the things that occurred during the global financial crisis. So we invited everyone to Citi Field, and we invited our peer banks. We talked about this idea about sharing best practices. A separate group from Deutsche Bank came to us afterwards and said, hey, we want to work across the industry as well. We have this trademark, it's called VOWS. I couldn't think of anything better. So we decided to leverage the trademark to really brand this initiative to help veterans and spouses transition into financial services. We also wanted to raise money, and we wanted to educate people. Those were really the goals at the time. And so we immediately went to work. In the beginning, we did it all ourselves. We put on a gala, we put on a job fair. This is back in 2011. And we raised money pretty well. We put on the job fair. It was a ton of work. But we struggled a little bit because we didn't know what to do with the money. I think we raised $1 million in the first year. And we're like, there are 55,000 veterans organizations. I'm a banker. I'm not somebody who allocates to those, does due diligence on those entities. So that was a bit challenged. And at the time, we also made the VOWS members contribute as part of the donation process into the pot. So a couple of years went by, and then we realized, what if we were to find a strategic partner? And we found that strategic partner in the Bob Woodruff Foundation. And they've remained our strategic partner ever since. And so what we continue to do every year is we have a major symposium where we brought in senior policymakers, standing members of the cabinet of government, secretaries of the armed forces, leaders of industry and government, like CEOs, you name it, and we've it's in the true spirit of partnership. We've shared the responsibility and the excitement, frankly, of hosting those conferences. We've done every year in person. Last year we hosted virtual for the first time, had great participation. We have job fairs. We do a lot of, generally we do is we bring veterans in the morning. We bring corporate hiring managers in the afternoon. There's some overlap and some job fairs going on, but we try to teach about how best practices through the transition through both lenses. I would like to say we've probably educated over 3,500 people, probably more than that. Maybe, I'd say it's in the thousands by now of people who have participated in our conferences. And that's been and I think we've impacted thousands of lives by helping them. And people pop up all the time and say, hey, you helped me. I went to your conference. I met this person and I got hired. And I've had scores of calls and discussions like that. So that's what we did on the job fair front and on the big symposium front. Fundraising, we partnered with the Bob Woodruff Foundation, and they have an incredible event every year. Bruce Springsteen headlines it. One year we couldn't get Bruce. We had to settle for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Just kidding to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They were fantastic.
I'm a fan.
And we have the top comedians in the world. And so what we do is we raise money. We bring our clients to that event. The clients love the event. We love the event. It's incredible. It's so wonderful. And we've raised millions of dollars over the years for the Bob Woodruff Foundation through that process. And the great thing about the Bob Woodruff Foundation, wonderful organization, they do professional vetting. So they know the 50-something thousand veterans organizations. We give them the money. They vet the organizations for us. It's arm's length. And then they allocate it during their grant cycle. So that has been just an absolute profound relationship. And then over the years, you learn stuff, right? And we realized that we were capable of raising money, and we had a great product with the show, and we were doing great things to raise money for the charities. And so we said, why do we make our original members contribute, to be, quote, members? By the way, it's important to note as well that VOWS is not an organization. We're not 501c3. We leverage the Bob Woodruff Foundation as a 501c3. We're simply a brand and an initiative of people trying to do the right thing. Of course, when there's donations, it goes to that 501c3. Everything is above board. But long story short, we were telling our members, look, if you want to be a, quote, member of us, give us, pay a minimum donation, and then you're, quote, a member. We're like, well, why are we doing this? And so along the way, we said, you know what, let's just let anyone be a member, institutional, of course. We don't have individual members, but what if we were to say there's no cost and, people can join, quote, VOWS, and overnight, hundreds of companies joined our initiative. And then something interesting happened where they started popping up in different parts of the country, and they started galvanizing and organizing around that brand called VOWS. And so the brand recognition has grown tremendously, and the brand is associated with our support of veterans, not only in financial services, but beyond. And so now we've got a couple hundred companies. We have a distribution list. We do a little bit when times, away from the COVID times, we had some organization where we would meet in the wintertime and go through best practices. We have a big summer event, and we would share, like maybe JP Morgan would host one night, one year, Goldman another, Citi another, whatever. We do drinks in the summer, and then we had our big event, our big symposium. Goldman's hosted, HSBC is hosted, Wells is hosted, Citi is hosted. So it's been a real wonderful experience of working closely with our partners who aren't competitors in this space. And now we have one of the most powerful things about VOWS is that network itself, right? Because we know pretty much everyone in finance. We have a decent social media presence. If I were to criticize our progress over the last few years, we've done a very good job in organizing across the banks, pretty good at raising money, very good about putting on those symposiums and education. But we didn't have a real enterprise approach to recruiting. And we would try, right? We would get people together, we would have a database, and we tried to share resumes and be more automated and thoughtful. We made a change, and I think it's a really interesting change that we made recently. So last year, we didn't spend any money on putting together the symposium, and we instead did it online via Zoom. And we took the budget associated with what it would cost to do it in person. And look, we don't charge people to come to our events. It's free. The host typically pays for it. But we took that money and we invested it in a platform called WayUp. Well, the Bob Woodruff Foundation invested in a platform called WayUp. And this is an early stage automated recruiting platform that is incredibly effective. And so now we're using that portal. We've got much deeper distribution across the veterans industry. We encourage all veterans to sign up for Way Up. And we also, many of our companies already access that website and that company. It's a very powerful tool. And so that, if you look at the trend here, we're trying to become more enterprise, drive more scale, and that's been the latest trend. But looking back, it's a huge, it's something I'm incredibly proud of, and it's an important part of my professional life, being able to help people who had to go through the same transition that I went through, and building those relationships across the industry has been an invaluable part of my life and my business. I will tell you, if I'm sitting across the table from another veteran and doing business with that other veteran, in a lot of ways, it's a lot easier. And I do business with some of the vets all the time. So I guess that summarizes our VOWS experience, and it's been absolutely delightful.
Yeah, wow, you're obviously very passionate about it, and you're involved in other things. I know, you mentioned the City Military Veterans Network and the City Salutes, Bob Woodruff Foundation. Why is helping other veterans so important to you?
I have there's a few things. I'm also, I'd love to tell the story of Team Rubicon. I served as vice chairman of Team Rubicon and have some incredible stories there, because as you get involved in this space, you get to know all the organizations, and I can tell you a little bit about that. And then we're doing some really interesting things going forward. But why do you want to help veterans? There's a couple of reasons. Clearly I'm a veteran, and there are certain values that I have and want to give back. But if you take that away for a second, why is diversity important? Why is support of veterans important? Very simple. It's really, really good for business. And why is that? It's because we've talked about this for many years. Veterans come with very, very unique skill sets that you just can't teach. Unique experiences that you just can't teach. They're all volunteers, and they have a certain set of values that is very difficult to teach. And so they come to us with this incredible life experience, incredible capabilities, and oftentimes incredible values. And I'm generalizing, you have exceptions everywhere, limited, but you have a very valuable demographic, typically as well with embedded diversity, right? If you look at the military demographic, it's generally a lot more diverse than some of the other demographics we look at. So they come to us with these important skills that we can't teach. And frankly, when people come to our desks, a lot of the training is on the job, and a lot of their acumen and proficiency is a function of how hard they work, and they tend to work really, really hard. So I see it as incredibly good business to bring veterans, because of their values and their assets and their capabilities, into our industry. It makes our industry better, and it helps our industry thrive, and it helps my bank and my business thrive as well. Of course, as a veteran as well, I'm very empathetic. I went through, and I understand all the challenges. It's not easy to go through a transition. And I just, as a human being, it's always important to me to give back and to help wherever I possibly can.
Yeah, you touched on it some in the last response, but you in the September 11th issue, you credited your military training and experience with really helping you excel in the competitive world of finance. And so, what ways has your military background continued to help your career?
I could give you a million different answers. Endurance is one. As you get more senior and you're traveling around all the time, when you're the senior guy in the room, you have to always be on and focused, and you have to be, you need to understand how to build teams and leverage your expertise, and how to supervise and how to coach and how to get the most out of your teams. Even things that people don't think of, like operating in other jurisdictions and other cultures, right? I was stationed in Japan for a number of years. And so when I roll into Japan and I try to do business in Japan, guess what? Speak a little bit of the language, understand the culture pretty darn well, and I can easily it's much easier for me to do business in some of those cultures because I've lived in them and I've experienced them. Then of course, it's really important to note, what do you do in the military as an officer? Like from my experience was, you have to understand the mission, understand not what your boss is trying to achieve only, but your boss's boss, and understand the strategy of the company. And then what you do is you structure organizations, you task organize to solve that mission. And so really one of the things that I think has benefited me most was to help construct a very capable, diverse, differentiated team, and then to help lead that team to differentiate and to excel. Those are just a couple of the examples. Of course, making sure that your values are always important. Sometimes you got to make tough decisions in this industry. Sometimes there is gray, and to the extent that you do the right thing, sometimes it may be when we built the first business I was talking about, I wasn't number one out of the gate. In many cases, I wasn't comfortable with risk. I wasn't comfortable with certain things that maybe my competitors were doing, but I stuck to my values and I built the business. And by retaining your values and staying true north, I think it's helped us thrive in the long term. So those are just a couple of examples. I could give you about a million more, but I credit almost everything that I've been able to accomplish back to my experiences and what I learned in the Marine Corps.
You also had touched on, you've been through transition, which isn't easy, and you're always interested in helping other veterans transition. Back in the September 2011 issue, you offered this transition tip to service members: it is never too early to begin forming a network. 10 years later, how would your advice change, or would it?
Absolutely. I think it was spot on. Developing a network is imperative. When veterans come to me, I seek to enhance their network. I think it's important for them to get other people's views and to keep expanding. So I'll share them their resumes and make them introductions internally. And then I'll say, hey, there are many other banks out there. Those banks are different than ours. We have, I like my bank. I think we're differentiated, but I want you to go out there. I want you to network with all the other banks because we want you to be a good fit. And if you're a better fit at Goldman, great. But, I encourage people to network like crazy to understand what's out there, what the opportunities are out there. And, when you're very confident in your programming and the way you can support the career and the trajectory of veterans, I want them to go out and gain that perspective and come back. But, it's imperative. Networking is so important. I will tell you some of the best relationships that I've made are also during times of stress. Like when I went through the bankruptcy of Lehman, connected with people at those times of stress, and then those relationships carry you through ever. Brexit and other stresses. I mean, the thing about finances, you never know what's going to happen when you come into the office. And sometimes you're facing pretty crazy days when there are financial stresses. Oftentimes it's those times when you need to leverage your network, or when you're transitioning. Clearly you want to understand what's out there. I talk to fellow veterans all the time and get their perspective on things that I'm trying to navigate, personally and sometimes professionally, depending if it's appropriate or not.
Well, this September marks the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Can you tell us where you were that day and perhaps talk about the biggest impact it's had on your life, your career, your family?
Yeah, I mean, I was in Japan. We were about to go out to the field and we were rolling out, and they called us back. My sister was at Goldman Sachs. She lived in Battery Park. She was treated as well. My buddy, Tony Egan, one of the guys who got me into thinking about the Marine Corps when I was young, he was in pharmaceutical sales. He was home when he saw it go down. He went into, grabbed his camis. He'd been out of the Marine Corps for many years, grabbed his camis, put them on, went to the scene, and bailed out and really helped deliver disaster relief single-handedly. He wasn't part of any organization. He ran to the fire, helped people out. We buried him a couple of years ago because he died of cancer based on that day. And, that's still, when I think about what he did and he left a son behind, it really gets me a little bit upset. But there's so much sacrifice that day. We've lost people also to cancer that I've worked with here at Citi went down to the rubble to look for family members and things like that. So it had a foundational impact on many of us. And then the wars that followed, I mean, had a massive impact. I've lost many friends subsequently from those battles. 15 in my own unit, best friend from college, like in the academy. So I think one thing that it continues to do for me is it gives me perspective. When you see what happened or you go through those wars, like, my unit, we took some pretty significant casualties. I think we had all 260 wounded in our battalion, out of about 1,000 men, 15 killed. When you get through that, I think there's a narrative that hasn't really been told. And in many cases, it makes us stronger, right? It's not that we leave those experiences with PTSD and broken. Yes, certainly our community has challenges around suicide and other things, but like, it also gives us perspective. And I think I look back on those experiences, and for me, it's a source of strength. It's a source of perspective, and it allows me to reach down and overcome. I have a piece of shrapnel from an IED that just missed me, and I keep it, and I look at it every so often, just to put to make sure that I retain that perspective, that it could have been all gone back in 2004, December 23rd, 2004, but it's not. And I'm here for a reason. I'm here because I have a purpose, and and I'm going to continue to drive forward.
What's next for you? I mean, you've accomplished an awful lot in your civilian career, obviously, your distinguished military career, but what's next for you? What would you like to experience? What would you like to accomplish?
So this is a little bit crazy. One thing I'm super excited about, there's so much more we can do, right? We're just getting started. I think as the wars fall behind us and we pull out of it, we have to make sure that people understand how, it's not about, hey, I don't want you to forget about the veterans. I want you to not forget about the value and the fact that we're national treasures. I can give you a couple of examples. Like when Hurricane Harvey went down in Texas, the floodwaters were rising. My buddies called me and they said, hey, we're going down there. They happen to be helicopter pilots. They went down to Texas. They found a place in Texas that hunts pigs from helicopters. They commandeered those helicopters and they started plucking people off the buildings and saved lives. We went down there and with an organization called Team Rubicon. As the floodwaters are rising, said, hey, who knows how to operate swift boat operations? And all the Marines were like, yeah, did it. We rescued like over 70 people. So the point is like, veterans bring incredible value. I want to make sure that we bring that value out across the nation, right? And that veterans continue to drive forward. In the future, working on an interesting project right now. 2 years ago, I got a call, and it was this guy named Robert Swan. And I'm like, who's Robert Swan? I didn't know who Robert Swan was. Turns out Robert Swan is one of the most accomplished polar explorers in history. He's the first man to walk to the North and to the South Pole. When he walked to the South Pole in the 1980s, his face burned off and his eyes bleached because he walked through an ozone layer. He didn't know about it. It was an incredible accomplishment when you navigate with a compass, and if you get your land nav wrong, you run out of food and you die. Went to the North Pole, was inserted in April, and it started melting beneath him, so he had to do a forced march to survive and not drown. Made it to the North Pole. And so he called me and he said, listen, I'm going down to complete my lifelong journey of traversing Antarctica. I'm bringing a veteran and I'm going, can you help us out? So we were able to get help the veteran get funded. He was an amputee, a guy named Cameron Kerr. They went down to Antarctica. Cameron called me. The prosthetic froze to, under 40 degrees below zero, froze to his skin. The skin ripped off. And he's just like, yeah, I just didn't want to slow people down. But he made it to the South Pole. Robert had an accident and didn't make it. He fell short on the 97th mile, and his hip disintegrated, and he had a lot of issues. And so where does this story go? He's going back to complete his journey. We've assembled a team of veterans, very diverse veterans, and they're going to be going down to the South Pole. There's a black soldier who did 9 tours from Wells Fargo, a guy named Chanda Mofu. Got a woman who is amputee with an osseointegration. First time that we think that type of amputation will be subject to these extreme conditions. Asian Marine, Sonny Lee, Battle of Fallujah, shot in the chest. Incredible story there. Very successful banker today. And then Cameron, and they're going to go back with Bob Woodruff. And so we're putting together a documentary on their trip into the South Pole. Why? And I called, this is an awesome story. I called my friend who was in bed with me in Iraq, a guy named Lucian Reed, a very famous cinematographer and photographer. He was filming The Deadliest Catch in the Bering Sea. He's like, hey, love two things, military veterans and polar exploration. I'm in. And so why are we doing this? What's the point? The point is to highlight veterans' resiliency. And what do I want to happen go forward? And of course, there's an environmental element there as well, and environmental awareness. But going forward, I just want to make sure that people remain inspired by the resilience of our veterans community, and that our veterans continue to go out there and drive service across industry and government, and make our country and the world a better place.
That's impressive. Thank you for all you've done for veterans, and thank you for taking the time out of what I'm sure is a crazy busy schedule to talk with us today. Is there anything else you'd like to add that we didn't talk about?
No, I just really appreciate what you do, Dan, for the community. And if there's anything I can ever do to help you on the business side or whatever, I'm here for you. So thank you.
All right. Have a good day, gentlemen.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks.